Laura, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my privilege. Now, you are a pioneer in the UFC. You're an American mixed martial arts commentator, former fighter. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then I want to talk about why you're involved with Alta Global Group.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the heart of it, I really am just a passionate fan. I started watching MMA around 2004 when I was in college and fell in love with the sport enough to start training myself in 2006, and then went on to have an amateur and very brief pro career. And then it sort of snowballed into becoming a broadcaster for the UFC. And now I'm the first female commentator since UFC 1. So it's been quite the journey. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still very much a fan.
And you have a lot of fans, millions of fans all over the world. What unique insights do you have into the needs of MMA gyms and athletes, given your background?
I've had kind of a unique perspective on things because not only have I had the sort of what I would call almost ubiquitous journey of someone who watches the sport, finds it interesting, finds it intriguing, sits there wondering, could I do that? I've been on that journey. But now, being involved with the UFC for a little over 8 years now, I also have that sort of 30,000-foot view where I've seen firsthand the growth of this sport from, last year, 2023 was our 30th year for the UFC. And it's just incredible to see it go from what I would call a group of interested observers that were intrigued to see what this crazy thing was 30 years ago, now to 640 million fans globally. And it's just been incredible to see the trajectory that this sport has had.
Tell us a little more about how you got involved with the MMA, the public company.
Yeah. So originally, Alta was called Wimp to Warrior, and that's how I first came across it. I had heard of this company called Wimp to Warrior, and a friend of a friend happened to be involved with them, and he said, "Hey, I think you could really bring something to the table here, and I think you would really enjoy it because." It's very much at that time, they were looking to reach people who were just like myself, fans at home, interested in the idea of could I do that? Could I really, could I get in a fight? Could I train? Could I have that same experience as these fighters that I'm watching on TV? And because that was basically my lived experience, it was a perfect fit. And I think I don't know, I was immediately passionate about being involved with them because it really speaks to the power that this sport has in terms of it just has this way of once you start training, it kind of grabs a hold of you and ignites, I think, a side of you that a lot of people, certainly I, didn't really know existed until I started training, and then I couldn't put it down. So when I got connected with Alta, it was kind of an immediate love between the two of us, and I'm excited that I've been able to help them bridge the gap between being a public facing company and connecting that with the journey that a fan and a participant would go through, because I've lived it.
You have indeed. I think your record was what, 4-1 when you fought, or you had 3 amateur fights, one pro fight.
Yeah, it's funny because it speaks to just, again, the growth of the sport. Back when I fought, they didn't always keep track of things. Well, so I actually have a few fights that never quite made the record books. But yeah, I was 8-1 overall. If you combine my amateur and pro career, certainly not. I definitely don't point to my MMA career as being my crowning achievement, but it gave me an insight into what a fighter goes through that has really allowed me to transition into the broadcasting side of things. And now working with Alta, it's been critical in helping me understand not only what participants of this sport go through and how they make decisions and how they find a gym and why they train, what their motivations are, but also I've spent the last 20 some years firsthand observing what the gyms go through and the challenges that the gyms face, because it's a very It's a very cottage industry. We live in an age where technology dominates everything that we do. And yet, in some of these cottage industries, it's still very much reliant on one individual who is a passionate martial artist teaching people in a small studio. And there's not a lot of sophistication to the way that they're able to run their business, and which Alta has figured out some tools to help them do that, and is really filling a need in that market for 45,000 gyms across the United States alone. It's pretty amazing.
Laura, given your perspective on the evolution of MMA, how important is the digital transformation for martial arts and gyms?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical, honestly, for the survival and growth of these gyms, because when we think of gyms outside of the context of martial arts, we think of big box gyms that have nationwide brands and big companies that can support their growth, right? But that's really not the case when you're talking about martial arts gyms. And again, there are 45,000 of them nationwide. There are probably 50 gyms within a 10-mile radius of you right now. But the majority of them are run by passionate martial artists. Most of them are an individual who experienced martial arts for themselves, and they thought, you know what, this is my life's passion. I'm going to open a gym. But they're not business people by and large. And most of their time is spent, as it should be, teaching on the mat. It's not spent figuring out ways to streamline and grow their processes. I train at a great gym here in Kansas City. It's one of the best in town. And yet, attendance in terms of like who's coming to class and who isn't is still done by punch card. Imagine coming to a library these days and actually pulling out one of those drawers and using a card. That's the era that these gyms are living in. They simply don't have the time or really the background to be able to integrate technology effectively into their day-to-day lives. And that is the role that Alta can come in and in one fell swoop present to them and give them this very easily accessible toolbox to help manage their payment systems, to help manage their curriculum, to track attendance, to allow the instructors to create content and deliver it to their smaller community and the community at large. These are all things that they desperately need and desperately want, but there's a chasm between I need this, I want this, I know I have a problem that needs to be fixed, and actually finding a solution. And that's where Alta comes in.
Laura, what excites you most about being part of the Alta team?
Well, two things. I mean, my background is in entrepreneurship and early stage venture capital. So I was very excited about, the prospect for the growth of this company. But really, at the end of the day, it's the idea of being able to give back to mixed martial arts. It gave so much to me when I found the sport and when I really dove into the training, that I was on a bit of a mental health journey, to be honest with you. Two different times. Once was a time when I was just going through a lot of personal difficulty, and I knew I needed something to take me out of those sort of spinning thoughts, and training did that for me in a way that running and lifting weights just simply didn't. And then later on in life, after I had my son, it was again sort of this mental health, I won't call it a crisis, but a need to find my identity again. So if I can participate in something that will benefit the sport beyond, just the excitement of being part of a high growth company, then I'm all in.
Well, it's a fascinating story. You're a fascinating human being, and we wish you the best in your career. Laura, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.